Ethan personally sent me to prison. My world collapsed in an instant. For the sake of his first love, he pushed me into the abyss. Ironically, he came to visit me every month. He sat on the other side of the visitation room, silently watching me. The prison guard repeated my words every time: the inmate refuses to meet. It had been 2 years, and I had not seen him once. I refused to see him and also refused to forgive. I did not know why he came. I only knew that my hatred had never diminished. Once I got out, everything would be turned upside down. Number 9527, you have a visitor. The cold mechanical voice echoed through the prison corridor, pounding on everyone's eardrums. I stopped polishing the part in my hand, without the slightest pause in my movements, and placed it steadily on the assembly line. The surrounding inmates cast glances of either sympathy or schadenfreude, their whispers crawling like insects in damp corners. It's that Ethan again, right? Such persistence, come rain or shine. TSK, he personally sent his fiancée in, and now he comes every month pretending to be affectionate. Who is he performing for? 9527 is ruthless too, 2 years, and not once has she met him. I turned a deaf ear, took off my dirty gloves, and followed the guard to the visitation room I knew all too well. Each step felt like treading on a poison blade. The iron door clanged shut behind me, cutting off all sounds. I sat on the cold iron chair and picked up the phone that always smelled of disinfectant. On the other side of the glass partition sat a blurry figure. I did not need to see clearly to know who it was. Ethan. This name was once the faith of my entire youth, now, it is the poisonous curse that gnaws at my bones and blood in my midnight dreams. I did not even need to look at him to imagine his current appearance: expensive custom suit, impeccably styled hair, and on that handsome face that once made my heart flutter. Was it guilt or routine indifference? I picked up the receiver without hesitation and spoke to the monitoring guard beside me, my voice as calm as stagnant water. Tell him I won't see him. Then, I hung up decisively, the receiver clacking crisply against the base. The guard, clearly accustomed to this monthly routine, picked up his receiver and helplessly repeated my words to the other side: Mr. Ethan, the inmate Lydia, refuses to meet. I did not linger for even a second longer, stood up, turned, and walked toward the iron door that separated me from freedom. As the door opened, I glimpsed in the reflection of the smooth door handle the figure on the other side of the glass, still sitting rigidly, unmoving. 2 years, 730 days. He came 24 times. I refused 24 times. My hatred, too, was sharpened like a knife through these 24 refusals. Back in the cell, I lay on the hard wooden bed and closed my eyes. Memories uncontrollably flowed back to that hellish afternoon 2 years ago. In the top-floor president's office of Chi Group, the sunlight was bright, and outside the floor-to-ceiling windows was the bustling city skyline. I was still wearing the engagement diamond ring he gave me, joyfully discussing the details of next month's wedding with him. Yet he pushed a document in front of me, his voice colder than I had ever heard. Lydia, this is evidence of you embezzling 20 million in company funds using your position. I was stunned, my mind blank. Ethan, what are you saying? I picked up the document with trembling hands. Every account listed clearly pointed to me, and the signatures were in my handwriting. Impossible. I didn't do this. I stood up abruptly, almost screaming. He just looked at me calmly, his face, that I had loved for 8 whole years, showing not the slightest emotion. The evidence is conclusive. He uttered 4 words, each like a heavy hammer smashing my world to pieces. The office door was pushed open, and several uniformed police officers entered. I looked at Ethan in despair, trying to find a trace of jest or reluctance on his face. There was nothing. Only a deadly cold silence. At the moment I was handcuffed, I saw Sabrina standing behind Ethan. His first love, the woman who always appeared weak and innocent. The corners of her mouth curved into a barely perceptible victorious arc. In that instant, I understood everything. In the early days of imprisonment, I was like a trapped beast, frantically ramming against the cage, roaring my grievances. In return, there was only ruthless suppression and deeper despair. The veterans in the cell, seeing that I was once a pampered young lady, found various ways to bully me, stealing my food, tearing my books, splashing cold water on my blanket at midnight. I did not cry, nor did I beg for mercy. Tears are the most useless thing in the world. Once, the most arrogant big sister came to snatch the steamed bun I had just received. I did not resist and let her take it. The next day, she broke out in red rashes all over her body, itching so badly she rolled on the ground and was urgently sent to the infirmary. No one knew that I remembered clearly her allergy to the cheap vanishing cream she used on her face, and the night before, while everyone was asleep, I had quietly sprinkled the allergen powder into it. After that, no one dared to provoke me again. They began to fear me because I was ruthless and quiet. A silent enemy is far more terrifying than a noisy one. I began to utilize every available resource. With the meager labor wages in prison, I bribed the guard in charge of the library to obtain books on law and business strategies. During the day, I was the numbly laboring prisoner number 9527. At night, when everyone fell into deep sleep, I greedily devoured that knowledge under the faint light seeping from the corridor. Every legal clause, every business case, became the cornerstone of my revenge plan. I perked up my ears to listen to external information mentioned in the guards' casual chats and stories of the outside world from new inmates. I heard Chi Group recently acquired that plot in the south of the city. Ethan is truly young and promising. Indeed, and his girlfriend, Sabrina, is in the news every day, either doing charity or attending banquets, very glamorous. These words pierced my heart like needles, densely packed. The more it hurt, the clearer my mind became. My 28th birthday was spent in prison. No cake, no blessings. My parents had cut ties with me after my imprisonment, ashamed of me. Former friends had long scattered like birds and beasts. That day, the only constant was the familiar name on the visitation notice, Ethan. He reminded me in this way that everything I had now was thanks to him. On the back of my diary, I carved a few words with my fingernail: Ethan, Sabrina, blood debt must be repaid with blood. That afternoon, the prison psychologist found me for the first time. Dr. Adrian, a middle-aged man who appeared gentle and harmless. He sat across from me and did not ask if I was adapting or needed help like others. He just looked at me quietly for a while, then adjusted his glasses and said something out of the blue: sometimes, lying low is for a more powerful strike. My heart skipped a beat, but my face remained impassive. I just raised my head and looked at him with an expression as if he were crazy. He smiled, said no more, and ended the session. But I knew this man was not simple. Prison life had taught me a profound lesson: trust is a luxury, utilization is the way. 3 months until my release. The tally marks carved on the wall were densely packed, each stroke soaked with my 2 years of blood and hatred. Dr. Adrian's conversations with me became more frequent. He always casually revealed external information. Recently, the stock market is turbulent. Chi Group's important overseas merger seems to have encountered some resistance, he said offhandedly while organizing his files. I was bowing my head, sanding a wooden craft with sandpaper, and upon hearing this, my movements did not pause. Dr. Adrian is quite interested in business news, I said in a flat tone. He raised his head, looking at me through his lenses with a probing smile. At my age, one has to find something to pass the time. Unlike you young people, your future road is still long. He added, I heard that Chi Group is not monolithic internally. Several elders have complaints about Ethan's style. Especially, Miss Sabrina has been too high-profile lately, causing quite a bit of controversy. I remained silent, just applying more force to the sanding. This information matched perfectly with the fragments I had pieced together from other channels. Ethan's empire was not impregnable. And Sabrina, the woman who climbed up by stepping on me, behind her apparent glamour, there must be countless hidden dangers. I sneered inwardly: the higher you climb, the harder you fall. Sabrina, your good days are coming to an end. I was testing Dr. Adrian, and he was testing me. We were like two chess players across the board, each move placed with utmost caution. I pretended to have no interest in his words, but inwardly, I memorized every word he revealed and analyzed it repeatedly. Whose side was he on? Friend or foe? Until the truth was clear, anyone could be my enemy. 1 month until release. Mia in the cell was getting out early. She was an unfortunate girl who came in for manslaughter and was bullied a lot after entering. Once, I helped her casually, and from then on, she followed me loyally, calling me Sister Lydia. The night before her release, we sat in a corner of the yard. I took out a crumpled note from my pocket, with a string of irregular numbers and letters. After you get out, don't go home. Go to this address, find a cyber cafe owner named Jack. Give this to him, and he'll tell you what to do next. Mia took the note, nodded heavily, her eyes reddening. Sister Lydia, don't worry, I'll get it done. I looked at her, this girl nearly 10 years younger than me, her face still childish, but her eyes showing a ruthlessness honed by life. Mia, the outside world is more complex than here. Remember, don't trust anyone easily, including that Jack. You must learn to judge for yourself. She clenched the note tightly in her hand, as if grasping her only hope. I understand, Sister Lydia. I'll wait for you to come out. With one look, she understood. My first chess piece had been placed. 1 week before release, I received the last visitation notice. Still that name, Ethan. This time, unprecedentedly, I stood in front of the glass in the visitation room for an extra minute. I did not pick up the phone, just stood with my back to him, quietly. I could feel the gaze sticking to my back, more complex and heavy than ever before, seeming to contain struggle, pain, and 1,000 words. So what? Belated affection is cheaper than grass. I straightened my back and left without looking back, leaving him only a cold, resolute silhouette. The night before release, all was silent. Facing a small shard of mirror I had secretly hidden, its edges smoothed, I looked at the face inside, pale, emaciated, but those eyes once gentle as water now held only the cold stillness and sharpness of a deep pool. The past Lydia had died the moment she was sentenced to death 2 years ago. The one alive now was Lydia returned from hell, a demon born solely for revenge. I took out the diary filled with revenge plans and carefully read it page by page. Every step, every detail, every possible variable and countermeasure had been rehearsed in my mind thousands of times. After reading the last page, I struck a match and burned 2 years' worth of effort to ashes. The flickering flames reflected on my expressionless face. The paper curled, blackened, and turned to ash in the fire. I no longer needed these things, for all the plans were already etched into my bones and fused into my blood. The next morning, the guard handed me a thin sheet of paper. Lydia, sentence completed, release. I took the release notice, the paper's texture felt so real it was almost surreal. My heartbeat, after 2 years of silence, throbbed intensely for the first time. Not because of freedom, but because the curtain of revenge was finally about to rise. I walked out of the prison gates, the glaring sunlight making me squint instantly. The world was strange yet familiar, high buildings, cars, pedestrians, the noisy sounds surged into my ears, shocking my eardrums. Freedom, it turned out, was such a heavy thing. The prison entrance was empty. I had long expected no one would come to pick me up. Fine, I did not need anyone's welcome anyway. I tugged at the ill-fitting cheap coat on me, walked to the roadside, and hailed a taxi. Driver, to Wutong Lane in the South District. That was the place I had Mia rent in advance, the top floor of an old neighborhood, cheap rent, mixed crowd, perfect for hiding. The room was simple, a bed, a table, a chair, that was all the furniture. But it was safe. Here was my new starting point, my war command center. I inserted a new SIM card and turned on the phone. The screen lit up, and an encrypted message popped up immediately, Sister, in position. Contacted Daniel, he's excited, says he's been waiting for this day for a long time. It was Mia. The corners of my mouth finally curved into a cold arc. The first chess piece had precisely landed in its position. Daniel, once the most outstanding project manager in Ethan's competitor's company, was ruined by Ethan's despicable means in abetting, disgraced. These years, he had been struggling at the bottom, his hatred would only be deeper than mine. A capable, hateful, and destitute person is the best knife to use. In the following days, I locked myself in the room, using a second-hand laptop to frantically collect everything about Chi Group, stock prices, financial reports, internal personnel changes, even gossip about Ethan and Sabrina. In 2 years, Chi Group's commercial giant ship appeared even larger, but the internal rust was more extensive. Several vice presidents were superficially united but inwardly divided, several major investment projects had returns far below expectations, all forcibly suppressed by Ethan's iron-fisted methods. And Sabrina, the woman who rose by stepping on me, had become the de facto mistress of Chi Group. The Wigwam charity fund she established, packaged by the media, made her the most dazzling charity socialite in high society. Looking at the news where she held Ethan's arm, smiling gracefully and charmingly, my stomach churned. Using my flesh and blood to pave your glorious path. Sabrina, it's time for your gorgeous robe to be stripped off. I contacted Mia via encrypted software and issued the first order. Have Daniel prepare. I want all sales data for this quarter of Chi's new fashion brand, the more detailed the better. Also, find a few beauty bloggers with many fans online, I have use for them. New Fashion was a fast-moving consumer brand under Chi targeting the youth market, a project Sabrina strongly promoted, one of her achievements. But the brand was flashy without substance, over-marketed, with very unstable foundations. What I wanted to target was Sabrina's proudest thing. A few days later, Danielle sent the internal sales data of New Fashion through Mia, along with a detailed analysis report. This knife was indeed fast and sharp enough. The data was much uglier than published in the financial reports, extremely high return rates, user complaints focused on product quality issues. I organized this data into a shocking report and anonymously sent it to several beauty bloggers known for counterfeiting and sharp tongues. I said nothing else, just attached one sentence, want to make big news? After doing all this, I began my second probe. Using an overseas registered, multi-layered disguised anonymous account, I mobilized a not too large sum of money to conduct a small-scale, quick-in quick-out sniper attack on Chi Group's stock in the market. The amount was small, not enough to cause big waves, but sufficient to let Ethan's sensitive hound sniff a trace of unusual scent. I wanted him to know that in the darkness, a pair of eyes was fixed on him. I wanted to make him nervous, paranoid, and shift his attention away from me, this already dead, insignificant person. Sure enough, the next day, financial news reported, Chi Group stock experienced abnormal fluctuations yesterday, suspected of malicious short selling by unknown funds. Chi has formed a special team to investigate. Sitting in the simple rental room, looking at Ethan's calm face on the laptop screen at the press conference, I sneered aloud. Ethan, you are very capable. But you underestimated the determination of a woman who crawled out of hell. You thought your opponents were the jackals and tigers in the business world? No. Your opponent is me, a devil you created with your own hands, living only for revenge. That evening, I changed into the most ordinary clothes, put on a hat and mask, and went to an open-air cafe opposite the Chi Group building. I needed to feel my enemy's presence up close. On the huge LED screen, Chi Group's promotional video was looping, Ethan's spirited face occupying the entire screen. He was declaring to the world how magnificent his business empire was. He did not know that his nightmare had already begun. Just as I was about to leave, a flashy red Porsche stopped by the roadside. The door opened, and a woman in a Chanel suit stepped out. It was Sabrina. She was dressed elegantly, with a perfect smile on her face. But after getting out, she vigilantly looked around. Then, the man in the driver's seat leaned out and quickly kissed her on the lips. That man was not Ethan. Almost instinctively, I raised my phone, zoomed in, and snapped a clear photo with a click. Sabrina, I accept this generous gift you sent me. My revenge plan gained another sharp knife. Ethan's investigative abilities were strong. But my counter-surveillance skills were honed bit by bit in the prison environment where information was strictly controlled. He mobilized Chi Group's top information security team, but ultimately only found that the short-selling funds came from an overseas shell company, with layers of firewalls behind it, leaving them empty-handed. This made him even more vigilant. A hidden enemy with sophisticated methods and unclear motives made him restless. But he could never dream that this so-called mastermind was Lydia, whom he personally sent to prison, who should hate him to the bone, yet was so insignificant that he had almost forgotten her. Revenge cannot rely solely on brute force. What I wanted was to destroy his heart. I wanted him to watch with his own eyes as everything he was proud of crumbled bit by bit in my hands. I needed a brand new identity, one that allowed me to stand openly before him. A month later, a grand business cocktail party was held in the city. Only the rich and noble could get tickets. I went too. Not as Lydia, but as a representative of a mysterious overseas fund who had just returned to the country. This identity was forged at great cost by Mia through Daniel's network, clean background, perfect resume, impeccable. That night, I wore a sharply tailored black gown, with refined yet distant makeup. I was no longer the Lydia who followed behind Ethan with a gentle smile. I stood in the corner of the cocktail party, holding a glass of champagne, like a cold-eyed hunter scrutinizing every elegantly dressed prey in the venue. Ethan and Sabrina were the focus of the entire venue. He was still handsome and tall, the object of all women's gazes. Sabrina, like a proud peacock, intimately held his arm, enjoying the envious looks from the crowd. Truly a match made in heaven, talented man and beautiful woman. I lowered my eyelids, concealing a flash of sarcasm. The timing was about right. I took the initiative to approach a balding man who was talking to someone. "Howard, long time no see," I said with a smile, raising my glass. Howard was a major supplier to Chi Group and a notorious old lecher. Before imprisonment, I had negotiated cooperation with him on behalf of Chi several times and knew his intentions clearly. He saw me, stunned for a moment, clearly not recognizing me. "Who are you?" "I'm And, we met at an auction in Europe before, you forgot?" I made it up on the spot, but my tone was so certain that he began to doubt himself. Old lechers usually have poor memory, especially for women they didn't get. Sure enough, he was fooled and immediately showed a greasy smile. Oh, I remember now, miss, and you're getting more beautiful." I ignored the greed in his eyes and casually chatted about recent business trends, inadvertently revealing the strong strength of the fund behind me and my strong interest in the domestic new consumer market, especially the new fashion brand. My voice was not loud, but enough for Ethan, who was entertaining nearby, to hear. Sure enough, he looked my way. His gaze lingered on my face for a full 3 seconds. It was a scrutinizing gaze, with a hint of inquiry and confusion. He might have found me somewhat familiar, but the strange face with a cool temperament dispelled his doubts. He just thought I was another woman trying to attach to Chi. He did not recognize me. Good. This was the first step. Halfway through the party, I accidentally encountered Ethan. He was surrounded by several bosses. I held my glass, pretended to pass by casually, then accidentally bumped into one of them. "Sorry," I apologized softly, my voice not loud but clear enough. Ethan's movements paused. This voice. He turned his head sharply toward me, his gaze sharp. But I had already turned, leaving him only a slender and resolute back. I could feel that gaze piercing my back like a needle. "Ethan, have you started to suspect?" "That's right. I wanted to plant a seed of doubt in your heart, let it slowly take root, sprout, and grow into a towering tree that keeps you awake at night." The next day, I received Mia's message, "Sister, Ethan sent people to check on you." Looking at the seamlessly forged profile on the computer screen, I smiled. Check away. The deeper you check, the deeper you'll sink. At the same time, the black material I had fed to those beauty bloggers began to ferment. A blogger with millions of fans released a review video with a blunt title, "Spent a fortune reviewing new fashion's full line, result. The biggest flop of the year, bar none." In the video, the blogger criticized new fashion products from packaging to ingredients to usage effects, leaving no stone unturned. More fatally, she posted screenshots of the internal data I provided on high return rates and user complaints. One stone stirred 1,000 waves. The video quickly topped trending searches: new fashion false advertising, new fashion trash products, Sabrina get out of business. Countless cheated consumers flooded the comments, tearfully accusing their experiences. New fashion's reputation collapsed overnight. Sabrina panicked. Her proud achievement turned into the biggest stain on her career. She began frantically deleting posts, doing PR, even trying to bribe the blogger with money. But she did not know that the blogger, and the several marketing accounts that followed, had long been protected by Daniel's side with higher prices. Sabrina's PR not only failed but aroused greater backlash from netizens. The more she struggled, the deeper she sank. Chi's stock price fell accordingly. Ethan was overwhelmed. And I received an unexpected yet reasonable call from Sabrina. She had somehow obtained my private number. As soon as the call connected, it was her signature tone, weak with a hint of arrogance. "Is this Miss N? I'm Sabrina. I think we need to meet." Looking toward Chi building from the window, my voice carried a playful smile. "Sure." The good show was just beginning. We met in a private room of a high-end club. Sabrina was still elegantly refined, but the lingering irritability between her brows ruined her carefully maintained perfect image. She got straight to the point, pushing a check in front of me. "Miss N, I know the recent new fashion issue is related to your fund. Here's 10 million, if you stop now and publicly clarify, this matter ends here." She was the same as always, thinking money could solve everything. I looked at the check and laughed. 10 million? I picked it up, twirling it between my fingers. "Sabrina, are you dismissing a beggar?" Sabrina's face darkened instantly. "Miss N, don't be too greedy. Offending Chi is not good for you." "Is that so?" I leaned forward, close to her, lowering my voice. "But I heard that the new fashion project was launched despite opposition because of you, Sabrina. Now with such a big mess, Ethan, hasn't he gotten angry at you?" Sabrina's pupils contracted sharply. I continued leisurely, "I heard that those old guys on Chi's board have long disliked you. This incident gives them an excuse to attack. What if Ethan, to appease the anger, pushes you out as a scapegoat? That would be interesting." Every word I said precisely hit her sore spots. What she was proud of was Ethan's pampering and trust, right? I wanted her to know that this pampering was worthless in the face of huge interests. "Who the hell are you?" Sabrina's voice became shrill, no longer maintaining her elegance. "Who I am doesn't matter." I tore the check into pieces bit by bit in front of her, then casually threw them on the ground. "What's important is, Sabrina, your good days are over." I stood up, looking down at her face twisted with anger. "Go back and tell Ethan, I'm not interested in the new fashion mess. But I'm very interested in ruining new fashion." With that, I turned and left, leaving her alone in the room like an enraged lioness. Sabrina was enraged by me. She launched a frantic counterattack. She used her connections to spread rumors about me, claiming I was a woman of unknown origin who was trying to blackmail the Chi family. She even recruited some local thugs to teach me a lesson. But she underestimated me. Before they could even get close to me, they were dispatched by several retired bodyguards hired by Mia. And the rumors she spread instead made my name as the mysterious investor and spread even wider in the circle. Everyone knew there was a fearless woman going against Chi, against Ethan's woman. I used Sabrina's stupidity to my advantage, and instead befriended several business partners who had been suppressed by Chi. Our enemy was the same. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The cracks between Ethan and Sabrina grew larger. According to the insider Daniel placed in Chi, Ethan had a big fight with Sabrina over the new fashion mess. Ethan was a businessman, he could tolerate Sabrina's pettiness and vanity, but not her stupidity and incompetence that caused huge losses to the company. His patience with Sabrina was being eroded bit by bit. This was not enough. I needed to add more fuel. I had Mia anonymously send the photo I took of Sabrina kissing that strange man, along with a detailed report I compiled on how Sabrina embezzled and lavishly spent from the Wigwam Charity Fund, to Ethan's biggest competitor, the president of Hong Yuan Group. Such black material is better used to borrow a knife to kill. Sure enough, within 3 days, Sabrina's scandals flooded everywhere. High society secrets, Chi's quasi-president's wife suspected of cheating, passionate kiss with mysterious man in car at night. Uncovering the luxurious life behind charity socialite Sabrina, where did the donations go? Photos, evidence, all complete. Public opinion exploded. Sabrina's perfect white moonlight persona shattered to nothing. From an envied charity socialite, she became a hypocritical gold digger cursed by all. Chi Group's stock price plummeted again. This time, Ethan's face must have been spectacular. He was cuckolded by his most beloved woman, known to the whole nation. He became the biggest joke in the world. Sitting in the rental room, eating instant noodles while watching the online condemnations of Sabrina and Ethan, I laughed until tears flowed. Ethan, for her, you personally sent me to prison. Now, this woman you protected with everything gave you the loudest slap. How does it feel? Sabrina was completely finished. Chi's board held an emergency meeting and forcibly removed all her positions in the group. The Wigwam Charity Fund was also put under investigation. She fell heavily from the clouds into the mud. She called me countless times, I answered none. Like a madwoman, she ran to the hotel where I stayed to block me. Stopped by security, she cursed at me across the gate, losing all composure. I just stood at the hotel's floor-to-ceiling window, coldly watching her. Watching her from hysterical to sobbing uncontrollably, finally slumping on the ground like an abandoned stray dog. Truly pathetic. At that moment, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. From the other end came a voice familiar to the bone, suppressing anger, "Miss," and "Let's talk." It was Ethan. I curved my lips, my voice cold and mocking. The good show has just begun, Ethan. What's the rush? Chi Group was besieged internally and externally. Stock prices continued to fall, several major projects in negotiation were shelved due to the scandal. The old guys on the board began to stir. Ethan's recent days must have been tough. From the cover of a financial magazine, I saw his latest photo. In just half a month, he had become haggard, his once spirited sharpness replaced by fatigue and gloom. In my heart, there was no sympathy, only the pleasure of revenge. That night, I received a call from Dr. Adrian. After release, this was his first initiative contact. Convenient to meet? Some things I think you'll be interested in. His voice was still gentle, but with an undeniable tone. We met in a secluded tea house. He was still genteel, as if the prison psychologist was just one of his disguises. He skipped unnecessary pleasantries and pushed a craft envelope to me. Take a look. I opened it. Inside was a photocopy of a document. The document's title made my breath hitch, Risk Assessment Report on Chi Group's Secret Acquisition of Yuanqing Technology Project. The date was 3 years ago. Yuanqing Technology, I remembered that name. It was the last project I followed before imprisonment. At the time, Chi was preparing to acquire this highly potential AI company, and I was the overall responsible person. Later, my embezzlement charge was discovered from this project's accounts. I flipped through the document page by page. The more I read, the heavier my heart sank. The report detailed that if Chi acquired Yuanqing through regular channels, it would face huge legal and public opinion risks because Yuanqing's core technology infringing an international patent. And on the last page, the solution was stark: fabricate a financial scandal for the project leader, Lydia, send her to prison, interrupt the normal acquisition process. Then, through a third-party shell company, maliciously acquire the chaotic Yuanqing technology at a very low price due to the founder's imprisonment, and quietly transfer its core technology and patents to Chi. My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. So that's how it was. From beginning to end, I was just a pawn that could be sacrificed at any time for Chi Group's interests. I was framed and imprisoned not just because of Sabrina's jealousy, but because she needed a scapegoat to complete this dirty acquisition. I had always thought Ethan ruthlessly pushed me into the abyss for his white moonlight. Now it seemed I was wrong. Or rather, Sabrina was just a cover, a convenient excuse to mask the larger interests and conspiracy behind. My heart felt gripped by an invisible hand, hurting so much I could barely breathe. Hatred. Overwhelming hatred almost consumed me. But what followed was an ice-cold clarity. My revenge target could no longer be just Ethan and Sabrina, but the entire Chi group, this corrupt business empire built on countless dirty deals and sacrifices. Where did you get this document? I raised my head, staring directly at Dr. Adrian. He calmly looked back. My purpose is the same as yours, to bring down the Chi family. He paused and continued, although Ethan is Chi's president, he cannot cover the sky with one hand, especially in front of his father, Victor. Victor. Ethan's father, the founder of Chi Group, the man who had long retired behind the scenes but still firmly controlled the family's lifeline. The real decision-maker for that acquisition plan back then was Victor. Dr. Adrian's words exploded like a thunderbolt in my mind. I had always thought my enemy was Ethan. Now I realized that Ethan might just be a knife in his father's hand. My path of revenge became clearer but also more difficult. What I had to deal with was not just a man blinded by love, but a cunning, ruthless business tycoon. That midnight, I received a recording from Mia. It was secretly recorded by a waiter she placed in the club Ethan often visited. In the recording, the background was noisy, but Ethan's drunken, regretful voice was unusually clear. I had no choice. I had to protect her. Dad, he would do anything. I'm sorry to her. I'm sorry to Lydia. The recording stopped abruptly there. I listened to those words repeatedly, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Protect me? He sent me to prison, ruined everything, this is protecting me? Ethan, what else are you hiding? I decided to temporarily slow direct attacks on Ethan. I would aim my spear at the real venomous snake hidden deeper, Victor. I had Mia and Daniel use all resources to dig deep into Victor's past. This old fox who had dominated the business world for decades had dirty hands with more than just you-inching technology. Sure enough, within half a month, a thick investigation report was on my desk. Victor's rise was practically a black crime record, embezzling state assets, colluding with officials, maliciously suppressing competitors, even involved in several unsolved cases. Looking at the shocking text in the report, I felt a chill from my feet to the top of my head. The Chi family was far dirtier than I imagined. Just as I was about to act, I noticed something amiss. Downstairs from my rented apartment, unfamiliar faces began appearing, sneaking around. My phone also started receiving silent harassment calls. It was Victor. That old fox had sniffed the danger. He began to counterattack. One night, returning to the apartment, I found pry marks on the door lock. I did not enter but immediately turned downstairs to a street corner payphone and called Mia. Plan ahead of schedule. Distribute what we have in batches to Victor's old friends. Tell them, revenge time has come. Victor had made countless enemies, many had been ruined by him over the years. They just lacked an opportunity, a leader. And now, I was delivering that opportunity to them. I wanted Victor to taste being besieged by wolves. The next day, Chi Group stock began plummeting without warning. Several deep cooperating suppliers suddenly unilaterally announced contract termination. Banks started demanding loan repayments. Chi Group's capital chain became precarious overnight. The net Victor had laid was torn open from inside by me with a huge gap. He surely did not expect I would counter in this way. That afternoon, a black Bentley stopped downstairs from my apartment. The door opened, and the person who stepped out was Ethan. He went straight upstairs, pounding fiercely on my door. Anne. Come out. I know it's you. I opened the door, looking at him coldly. His eyes were bloodshot, his face full of anger and pain. Why are you doing this? Why target my father? He rushed in, grabbed my shoulders, and shook me forcefully. This was our first real face-to-face confrontation. I let him grab me, my voice without a trace of warmth. "Ethan, you're only asking why now?" I stared into his eyes. "2 years ago, when you sent me to prison, why didn't you think about why?" His body stiffened, his grip loosening unconsciously. You know everything? What I should know, what I shouldn't, I know it all." I shook off his hand, stepped back, and distanced myself. "You-enching technology, Victor, and your ridiculous protection theory. Ethan, do you take me for a fool?" I slammed the acquisition report in his face. "Look at your father's good deeds. Look at how dirty your chief family is." Ethan looked at the scattered files on the ground, his face turning pale instantly. He knew I had grasped all the core secrets. "What do you want?" His voice trembled with despair. "What?" I sneered. "I want the Chief family to pay for everything they've done. I want Victor disgraced and imprisoned for life." "You can't do this." Ethan's emotions surged. "My dad is old, He's old, so he can trample lives?" I interrupted sharply. "Who pitted me during those 730 days and nights I was locked in prison?" Our standoff reached a deadlock. Meanwhile, outside, the Chief family's great ship was sinking rapidly at a visible speed. I united those Avengers and exposed Victor's early scandals one by one through various channels to the public. Public opinion was in uproar. The man once shaped by media as a business godfather became a rat everyone shouted to beat overnight. Cheat Group's board, for self-preservation, urgently removed all Victor's positions and publicly announced severance. The business empire he built with his own hands was the first to abandon him. Victor was completely overthrown. The day Victor was taken by police for investigation, Ethan came to find me. He did not drive or bring bodyguards, just stood alone downstairs from my apartment, dejected. It was drizzling, he was soaked, looking wretched. I stood by the window, coldly watching him for a long time, and finally went down. I did not let him in but held an umbrella, standing before him. "Watching my joke, you're very satisfied, right?" He raised his head, rainwater sliding down his gaunt cheeks, indistinguishable from tears. "Yes," I admitted frankly. "I've waited for this day for 2 years." He suddenly laughed, the sound full of despair and self-mockery. Laughing, this once arrogant, high and mighty man suddenly knelt with a plop before me. "Lydia, I'm sorry." He knelt in the cold rainwater, looking up at me, tears finally bursting. "I'm sorry, really sorry." I looked at him, my heart without a ripple. If apologies worked, what need for prisons? "Ethan, put away this pitiful look, I won't forgive." "I know, I don't seek forgiveness." He choked. "I came today just to tell you all the truth." Kneeling on the ground, he intermittently told the so-called truth he had hidden for 2 years. Back then, when Victor decided to use dirty means to annex you-enching technology and selected me as the sacrifice, Ethan opposed it. He argued and resisted with my father, but to no avail. Victor threatened him with my family. If he did not comply, what I faced would not just be prison, but something more terrifying, disappearance from the world. Victor was ruthless and capable of anything. Ethan said he had no choice but to protect me this way. He forged evidence and personally sent me to prison to make me disappear from Victor's sight, into a relatively safe place. He thought that as long as I served 2 years, once the storm passed, he could get me out and compensate me. He visited every month to let me know he had not given up. Sitting behind that cold glass, watching my resolute back, his heart was cut like a knife. He wanted to tell me the truth but dared not, because he knew as long as Victor was around, I would never have peace. I quietly listened to his confession, feeling only immense absurdity in my heart. "So, I served 2 years in prison, ruined my reputation, family broken, and I should thank you for your protection?" I asked coldly. "No. No." He shook his head painfully. "I know, nothing I say can make up for it. I was wrong from the start. I shouldn't have been so cowardly, shouldn't have submitted to him. What's the use of saying this now? Looking at him kneeling in the mud, so humble in the dust, the overwhelming hatred in my heart actually loosened a bit. It turned out he was not entirely evil. He was just a pathetic coward bound by family and interests. But I would not forgive him. The damage was done, irreparable forever. Ethan, I won't forgive you, I said word by word. But I can give you a chance to atone. He raised his head sharply, as if grasping the last straw. Tell me, anything I can do, I'll do it. I want you to help me completely destroy Chi Group. My voice was cold as ice. This is your only redemption. He was stunned, then gave a wretched smile. Okay. He agreed. For atonement, he chose to personally destroy his family's foundation, to join me in burying that corrupt empire. He handed me all Chi Group's internal top-secret materials, financial loopholes, and Victor's black transaction chains over the years. With these, Chi Group had no chance of turning over. Just as we prepared the final assault, Sabrina, the woman I had almost forgotten, jumped out again. She somehow learned of Ethan's betrayal of the family and cooperation with me. Like a madwoman, she drove straight into my apartment building. Fortunately, Mia got wind in advance, and we evacuated in time. Looking at the wrecked Porsche downstairs and the deranged Sabrina being taken by police, I only felt it laughable. This woman, to the end, was so stupid. She had exhausted her tricks. I teamed with Ethan for the final assault. The fatal evidence he provided was released in batches, rhythmically, to media and regulators. The entire business world was shocked. Chi Group's dark side was peeled layer by layer, bloodily exposed to the public: tax evasion, financial fraud, official business collusion, human lives lawsuits, each piece shocking. Media's overwhelming reports nailed Chi to the pillar of shame. The once glorious business empire became infamous overnight. Huge fines, class actions followed. Chi's stock price hit limit down all the way, finally becoming worthless paper. This once brilliant business empire, in its 30th year, officially declared bankruptcy and liquidation. The edifice collapsed with a boom. Victor was sentenced to life imprisonment in prison. Sabrina, too, was sentenced for previous multiple crimes. They both paid the due price for their sins. On the day the dust settled, Ethan asked to meet. Still at that cafe we once loved most. He pushed a document to me. This is all my assets, including the Chi family old house. Now, they are all yours. He chose to leave with nothing, repaying his debt to me this way. I did not accept. I don't want your money. What I want, I'll earn myself. He looked at me for a long time, nodded. I'm leaving, he said. Leaving here, to a place where no one knows me, to start over. Good. He stood up, bowed deeply to me. Lydia, take care. With that, he turned and left, without looking back. I watched his back disappear around the corner, my heart indescribable. Great revenge achieved, yet no imagined ecstasy, only a huge emptiness. A few days later, I acquired some premium assets from the bankrupt Chi Group and founded my own company, New Life Group. At New Life Group's founding press conference, for the first time I stood under all media spotlights as the real Lydia. I calmly recounted my 2-year experience, the ins and outs of that shocking injustice. I cleared my name and regained my dignity. After the conference, Mia and Dr. Adrian came to me. Mia had become my most capable right-hand, vice president of New Life Group. And Dr. Adrian finally confessed his true identity. His father was once Victor's best partner but was framed by Victor, leading to family ruin. He had been lurking these years, waiting for a revenge opportunity. My appearance gave him hope. We were natural allies. I stood in New Life Group's top-floor office, overlooking the city that once took everything from me, now under my feet. I, Lydia, was back. As a queen. I became a legend in the business world. A woman who walked out of prison and personally overturned a business empire. My name, Lydia, frequently appeared on covers of major financial magazines. Those who once avoided me or even kicked me when down now tried every way to flatter and curry favor with me. I stood at the pinnacle of power, enjoying unprecedented glory. But in the dead of night, huge loneliness and emptiness would engulf me entirely. Revenge was once my only goal to live. Now, with great revenge achieved, I was like a sailor who drifted at sea too long, suddenly ashore, lost direction. Dr. Adrian seemed to see my confusion. He told me Ethan had settled in a remote town abroad. He no longer engaged in any business-related work, just as a community library administrator, living a poor but peaceful life. He never remarried, always alone. Once, I received an anonymous international package. No letter inside, just a photo. The photo showed a field of blooming sunflowers. That was my once favorite flower. I looked at the photo in silence for a long time, then put it in the deepest drawer. I began to think, after revenge, what should my life be like? Continue indulging in power games, or find a new direction? I handed most company affairs to Mia and Dr. Adrian, my most trusted partners. I used part of my wealth to establish a charity foundation, specifically to help women like me who suffered injustice and were desperate. I hoped to use my power to help them gain a new life. I began to re-examine my life. I no longer lived only for hate. I wanted to live for myself. I started learning new languages, traveling worldwide, broadening my horizons. On a sunny afternoon, alone, I sat in that cafe where I once dated Ethan, ordering my favorite latte. Recalling the past, my heart was calm. Those loves and hates faded gradually with time. Years later, at an international business summit in Switzerland, I unexpectedly reunited with Ethan. He attended a charity segment as a local community representative. He was thinner than before, more weathered, but exuded an unprecedented calm and steadiness. He saw me in the crowd, stunned, then gave a faint smile. That smile had no resentment, no hate, only the relief of meeting an old acquaintance. During a summit break, we had a calm conversation by Lake Geneva. Like two old friends long unseen. "You're doing well," he looked at me sincerely. "I often see you in the news. I'm proud of you." "You too," I looked at his simple cotton shirt. "It seems you've found the life you want." He smiled, nodded. "Lydia, He seemed to want to say something, but finally, it turned into a sigh. "For what happened back then, I've paid the price. Now, I just want to say to you, wish you happiness. I stopped hating you long ago," I said calmly. "But I won't love you again. Ethan, between us, only relief remains." His eyes reddened a bit, but he nodded with a smile. "I understand." That meeting was our last conversation. We formally bid farewell to the past. From then on, we went our separate ways, mountains high and waters far, never to meet again. My heart achieved complete liberation. No longer troubled by past shadows, I lived a truly independent, strong self. I wrote my experiences into an autobiography. Ethan sent me to prison. After release I made him kneel. Titled New Life. This book unexpectedly became a bestseller, inspiring countless women struggling in adversity. At the book's end, I wrote, "Hatred will eventually dissipate, only self-growth and inner strength are eternal." My business map continued to expand in the following years. New Life Group became a true business empire spanning multiple fields. And I, Lydia, became its sole queen. I no longer pursue pure commercial interests, but am committed to using my power to create a fairer and more transparent business environment. The foundation I founded has helped thousands of women escape hardship and regain their lives. Mia and Dr. Adrian also found their own careers and happiness. We were each other's strongest allies and closest family. As for Sabrina and Victor, they would spend their remaining lives behind cold iron bars. Their endings warned the world that any evil would eventually be reckoned. My story was adapted into film and TV, popular nationwide, becoming a phenomenon. Many asked in interviews if I regretted. I just smiled without answering. Life has no turning back, every step counts. It was those pains, betrayals, struggles that shaped me today. I stood on the stage of the Global Women Leaders Summit, facing elite women from around the world, sharing my story and values in fluent English. I emphasized women's power, the importance of economic and personal independence. At the end, the audience applauded thunderously. I did not, like a fairy tale princess, end up marrying the prince. I chose a broader life stage. My world is wonderful because of me. My name, Lydia, became a symbol of an era. It represents resilience, wisdom, and unyielding power. I stood before the office floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the glittering city below, a confident smile curving my lips. The Queen's path never stops. My legend has just begun.